Shortly thereafter, we have another piece of primary source evidence. We have a travel itinerary for the President, the United States Special Envoy, one Donald Rumsfeld, meeting here in December of 1983 with Saddam Hussein and his foreign minister, Tariq Aziz. This travel itinerary is very telling. It tells us the reasons for this meeting. I told Sahaf, Undersecretary for Foreign Affairs in Iraq, that perhaps the greatest benefit of the visit will be the establishment of direct contact between an envoy of President Reagan and President Saddam Hussein. Sahaf replied that the visit would probably begin with a meeting at the Foreign Ministry with Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Tariq Aziz, who would be accompanied by Sahaf and possibly Kitani. This would be followed by a more restricted meeting with Saddam Hussein. Topics for discussion are also included in this itinerary. Topics on the list: the Gulf War, war with Iran; Middle East peace, apparent Israeli conflict; Lebanon, recently the site of the Israeli invasion; Syria, and any other question that the Iraqis wish to raise. December 1983, the prospect of Iraq losing this war, President Reagan sends a special envoy to meet directly with Saddam Hussein. His special envoy is Donald Rumsfeld, and who was Chief of Staff in the Ford administration during the 1970s. We have more evidence. We have more State Department evidence. State Department evidence relates to the Secretary of State at the time, George Shultz. We briefly met George Shultz in lectures on the invasion of Lebanon. We saw him condemn the massacre at the Shatila and Sabra refugee camps outside of Beirut. What do we have here for George Shultz? Well, we've got contact between the U.S. Embassy in Israel and the State Department. We have contact between the State Department and the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad, both of which discuss the issue of chemical weapons. Let's look first at the January 1984 cable from the Secretary of State to the U.S. Embassy in Israel. Date, January 1984. Points of importance here: the curtailing of arms sales to Iraq. Curtailing of arms sales to Iran. Control on U.S. exports to Iran. Iran had been a major trading partner prior to the fall of the Shah. Also on the agenda, liberalizing export controls on Iraq and licensing of non-lethal munitions such as armored ambulances, communications gear, and electronic devices for the protection of VIP aircraft, again, for the Iraqis. On the third page of this document, you see an interesting workaround, a diplomatic sanctioned workaround in points 7 and 8 here. A way to send old Egyptian tanks, old American tanks that had been given to Egypt, to Iraq, and then America would replace those now Iraqi tanks with brand new state-of-the-art American vehicles. In the context of recommending ways to improve our relations with Iraq, Egypt has suggested that we provide it additional M60 tanks. Beyond those, we are now providing. Egypt would use the additional M60s to replace used Soviet T-62s, which it would sell to Iraq. I'm sorry, I said that Egypt was sending old American tanks to Iraq. They're selling old Soviet tanks to Iraq, T-62s, and replace them with American M60s. This is January of 1984. 2 months later, we have a cable from George Shultz at the State Department to the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad. A little aside here, a cable. It's a telegram of sorts on a secure line. Before the internet, way back here in the 1980s, this is how you communicated something that was sensitive by these secure telegrams, secure cables. What do we have here in this March 1984 document? Well, we have several things. It seems that a U.S. company has shipped 22,000 pounds of phosphorus fluoride to Iraq, and there's concern that that will be used to make chemical weapons. There's concern here about the increasingly widespread use by Iraq of chemical weapons in point number 4. Point number 5, U.S. quandary is laid out at the bottom of the paragraph. The U.S. will not allow itself to knowingly become a source of chemical weapons elements. Therefore, we seek clarification and assurance regarding the purpose and precise use of this chemical, e.g., details of timing, point of intended manufacture and finished product, chemical description of finished product, and intended use. The U.S. will not allow itself knowingly to become a source of chemical weapons elements. What else do we have here in this cable? Well, on I guess it would be page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 here in the PDF. More concern about chemical weapons use and Iraqi denials of said chemical weapons use, denials delivered to the U.S. ambassador, the embassy in Baghdad. Chemical weapons. When we come back next time, we're going to look at how this once cozy relationship between the United States and Iraq breaks down. It breaks down in the summer of 1990 when a desperate Iraq invades its erstwhile ally and oil-rich neighbor, Kuwait. We're going to look at 4 main pieces of primary source evidence for this lecture. We've got another State Department cable. We've got some CIA reports. And we have a document on the Treasury embargo of Iraq that was established soon after the invasion. Operation Desert Storm. Next time.